Namaste and welcome to the Healing Mirror podcast. My name is Saraswati, and here I'm offering discussions, global satsangs, and interviews with spiritual teachers, philanthropists, and awakened and inspirational humans. Namaste. Welcome to the Healing Mirror. We're here today with Swami Karma Karuna. And Karma Karuna is a sister Swami to myself, which makes this a very enjoyable podcast to share with you. So we'll be having a conversation today about yoga, about meditation, and Yoga Nidra, which is a practice, as many of you know. I have my own recordings and I've been teaching Yoga Nidra now for 35 years. Swami Karma Karuna also teaches Yoga Nidra and has started a training program for Yoga Nidra as well in New Zealand. So from New Zealand now, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Karma Karuna, who has been following the Saraswati lineage with Swami Naranjan or Naranjanananda Saraswati in India. She's trained in India and Australia like myself, but also I think spent some time in Nepal. So I introduce you now. Hello, Karma Karuna. Namaste.
Namaste. Wonderful to be here with you, and it is a real honor to be with my sister Swami, and to talk about these wonderful topics.
So this year has heralded quite a few changes for all of us with COVID and restrictions here in Australia, but also where you are in New Zealand. And actually, Karma Karuna and I were heading off to Tibet together this year. Karma Karuna was joining my expedition and retreat to walk around Mount Kailash this year, which we've postponed, but I really hope that we'll be doing that perhaps next year.
Me too.
Or maybe the year after.
Could be at this point.
So you're on the top of the South Island of New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about the beautiful area where you're living.
Yeah, so I'm very honored to live in Golden Bay, which is top of the South, and we're surrounded by two national parks, the Abel Tasman and the Kahurangi, and the ocean on the other side, and one road in and out, and it's just this beautiful area with amazing microclimates, so lots of good growing for avocados and nice yummy food and beautiful community. And Anahat, where I've been living for close to 24 years now, is up on top of the mountain, kind of up next to in the native forest, but overlooking this whole Golden Bay. So very special spot and wonderful community that I really love to live in. Yeah.
I can hardly believe, having traveled the world, Terry and I, and you're just next door in New Zealand, and we've been meaning to get there for so long. This year it was all going to happen and COVID shut it down. So
yeah, well, hopefully there'll still be an opportunity. We'll definitely try to keep that seed in the soil.
Absolutely. Now, you're not originally from New Zealand, are you?
No, I'm not. I was born in Hawaii, so I think there's a link between Hawaii and New Zealand with a similar culture and even language and songs and practices. Like I do the outrigger canoeing here in New Zealand, which is very popular also in Hawaii. So that was my birthplace, and then I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, and I left when I was about 23 and went on a world journey, and I headed over here to New Zealand, spent some time in Australia, went over to Southeast Asia, and eventually ended up in Nepal and India, where I came across my yoga path. And once I found my yoga path, it just took over. So
I understand. The same here. at a very young age. But
once you're in that stream, you're kind of going in that direction, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, well, there's this irresistible pull to discover who am I, isn't there?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you first met yoga.
Gosh, so when people think about yoga, often they think about just touching their toes. But of course, in our system of yoga, it's the whole shebang. So it's the lifestyle, it's the meditation, it's the chanting, the touching your toes, the breathing. And so really, I would say when I was already 19, I came across these concepts. So it wasn't yoga in the form that I'm doing it now necessarily, but I had studied Buddhism in university. It wasn't my major, but I did some classes in Buddhism, and I had to go off and go to the Zen Buddhist center and do some meditations with them. I went to the spiritual church and was kind of checking out, well, what are they doing? And I used to go, like, that was the time when there were some really great teachers who'd gone over to the East and come back. So I got a chance to be with some of those, teachers or hear their lectures. And so I was really exploring from the age of about 19. And I went to got my massage license. I was already into healing work. And then when I started traveling, it was really a search for finding my path. And I tried all sorts of different things on my journey. Even to my brother and I spent a couple months in Malaysia, and we did Ramadan fasting with the Muslim community there. And I spent some time in Laos and Thailand and went to lots of the Thai monasteries and met the monks. And in Nepal, I also continued in that realm. And eventually I kind of came across a 1-month yoga teacher's training. And it was a point in my life where I just felt so open, and I was just in the flow. And it was like, which I aim to be now too, of course. That was probably the first real experience where I could, really feel like things were unfolding and drawing me where I needed to be. And so I went off to this 1-month teacher's training course, and it was a very intensive course where we did the full cleansing practices and, all quite advanced practices, actually.
Was that in Mongia?
Wasn't in Mongia, it was in Nepal, but one of the Swamis who now lives in Mongia and Rikya and has been for quite some years, she was part of that teacher's training. So that was kind of probably my link to the lineage for the first formal link. But if I look back, I kind of had links leading me to that. So all the people.
Interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Because I first started yoga through the link of a Satyananda trained Swami when I was 19. So
there you go.
and the Indian school you're talking about is Bihar School of Yoga, isn't it?
Yes. So but I actually came to Bihar School of Yoga later. So I did that course in Nepal. I did some Vipassana in Bodh Gaya, and I did do yoga during that time frame, and it was Bihar School of Yoga, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
And then I met Swami Mukti Dharma, who is my ex-partner, and we spent quite a bit of time in the Himalayas and doing sadhana. And at that time, we also conceived our child and came to New Zealand and we started Anahat and raised our young woman. And so, and then I went back to India a couple years later, and that's when I actually met Swami Niranjan and took initiation and kind of my, and also Swami Satyananda at that time, and my deeper journey, you could say, with the lineage began. But I had a lot of experiences leading up, like everybody and everything I came across once I stepped onto the yoga, the yoga lineage path, had to do with Satyananda yoga. Like I never found, I didn't just go to a yoga class or everybody I met had been or was going to Bihar School of Yoga or, had lived there. My ex-partner, he'd lived there for many years, 16 years. So I somehow or another, I was in that line. And I didn't meet anything else. So that also satisfied everything in me. I'd always been quite interested in different aspects. I was interested in spiritual healing. I loved to dance. I loved to sing. I was very physical, so I liked the Hatha yoga and the Karma yoga because I needed to be busy to direct my energy. And so when I came across this style of yoga from the Bihar School of Yoga, it kind of had all those things within it. So I didn't have to choose. Before that, it was like, oh, well, the Buddhist path is more about meditation, and this path is more about maybe bhakti yoga, where you're devotional. And I found in our system, the Bihar system, that it's kind of equal measures of all the ingredients, which really served the different aspects of my personality. If that makes sense.
Makes total sense to me, of course. And I'm sure it's great for the listeners to hear that as well. I felt, for me also, once I found this style of yoga, that it tended to nourish all aspects, because there are so many different paths of yoga.
Yes. Yeah.
And some lineages really just focus on the Hatha yoga, or they just focus on the Bhakti yoga.
That's right.
They just focus on the Karma yoga, or they just focus on the Gyan yoga. But the teaching which we were privy to through our lineage encompasses all of that.
Yes.
And also focuses on the true essence of yoga, of course, which is to yoke and to bring things into balance and harmony.
Yes, it's a very holistic system, and working on all the layers of who you are. And I just found, for me, it gave me the way to express myself, also to tune into the inner layer, to have that way of understanding and doing self-reflection, ways to serve the community and be of service and use. So it allowed me to express all of who I am, and didn't feel like, okay, I can only do this, or I can only do that, or I can only do that. And so for me, that's what really inspired me on this path. Very, very open. I remember going the first time I went to Rikya Pete and met Swami Satyananda. There was all these amazing yoginis that were, dressed in orange and chanting. And then the next time I came, they had the head of the Muslim community, and we all had to cover our head while they read the Quran. This is in a yoga community. And then the next time I came, they had a priest from Greece who gave us, communion.
And I think Swamiji dressed up as the Pope or something at that point.
He was always really into it.
There was a lot of symbolism in that. I remember I was actually at that gathering in Rikya, which is up in the very north of India, above Calcutta. It's not Jharkhand, is it now? It
is Jharkhand.
Oh, it is Jharkhand. It's in the state of Jharkhand, which is right near Bihar, the state of Bihar. So it's a very poor area of India. And Swami Satyananda left Bihar School of Yoga, which is in Bihar, and then went wandering and settled on this piece of land in Jharkhand and started doing fire ceremony. And said, I've left the ashram, but of course another ashram built up around him. But he ended up serving that community. And I actually hadn't seen him for years. And I remember the first time I went there, I arrived and I said, Hari Om Swamiji. And he said, he said, you're not a little girl anymore. You've grown up.
Oh, beautiful.
I've grown up now. And of course I had my 3 sons with me, so I'd really grown up. And he said, I don't practice yoga anymore. He said, I just serve the community. And it was really beautiful, because that is the difference, I suppose, between Bihar School of Yoga and then his second place which really was set up to serve that very, very poor community there of
And
yoga.
beautiful programs that developed in the times I've been going there. It went from, you know, really a very remote, poor place to now they've got amazing medical services, and the children are all, they've got incredible camps where the children get to learn all sorts of skills that they can use both for pleasure but also in their life that could help them progress. And the widowers are being taken care of, and the pensioners, and it's really an amazing you know, development and expansion of service. And so his vision really truly has unfolded there.
Absolutely. And I actually, one year I went over, I left my oldest son, Aruna, who's now 31, but at that point he was 17. And he stayed for 3 months, and he was teaching the village children basic computer skills back then.
Yep. Yeah.
And he just gained so much from that. Yeah, I think a lot of people mistake yoga to be, as you mentioned before, you know, the postures and the practices, whereas actually yoga is the state of union. Yoga is the state of balance. And I think when we have a deeper understanding of ourselves as a body mind, you know, in this humanity, in this life, then I think we may not need to do postures, or we don't need to do anything if we are drawn to that deeper understanding quite naturally.
I mean, mind you, that I do find personally, and actually she does as well, that doing the practices kind of helps me, you know, keep closer to that state. You know, so that when I do kind of do the daily practices in some way or another, then it supports me to keep in tune with myself and with that greater environment. But ultimately, it's a state of mind and a state of experience, and it's not the practice. And I do feel we mistake it. We get attached to the actual practice and don't realize that what we experience on the mat, that the whole aim is that we bring that out into whatever the experience is. And
absolutely. And you know, I still teach a little myself, and I still the actual yoga practices, and I still do them because they keep this body in a wonderful, open, flexible state, which I really enjoy, that freedom, you know, within the body, and having a healthy, strong, flexible body helps to have a healthy, strong, flexible mind, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. Keep the temple shined up.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So you're in a bit of a transition stage at the moment, aren't you?
I am. I just turned 50, so I've stepped into my forest dweller. And of course, I don't know if the listeners know those 4 stages in the traditional Vedic way of looking at life, but you have 0 to 25, which is your brahmacharya. So it's that stage of learning, and that's both at a spiritual level as well as, you know, learning and getting educated on the physical realm. And then you've got your 25 to 50 where you're a householder and you kind of more connected to society and raising children and maybe having a job to make money, all these type of things. And I've now just stepped into the forest dweller from 50 to 75, and your aim is to kind of withdraw a bit from society and all those day-to-day activities and start to give more time to personal practice and sadhana and spiritual expansion and transformation. So I'm really, you know, the timing is perfect, you could say. I was already feeling it within myself that a change was underway, and now with COVID giving a clear stamp to come back to myself, like many others are finding. I'm really considering my next steps and seeing how that will unfold in relation to Anahat, which has been here nearly a quarter of a century now, and how that will also express for myself in the coming years. So definitely a transition, but I know the essence, I know it has to be about me coming more into myself and having more time for my personal practices and I don't think I'll ever not be able to serve, because that's part of my name, Karma Karuna, which is, so when Swami Niranjan gave me the name, he said I should step into the boots and the shoes of others and try to serve and act and give from their perspective so that I could be of most help. So I think that part of giving, serve, love, give is a part of who I am. So I won't be stepping out of that, but I'm looking at it expressing itself in a new format where I can do some of the things that I'm really passionate about and really inspire me and hopefully inspire others. So we'll see how that unfolds. Just watch the space, as the young ones say.
Well, I can say that when I turned 50, I had a huge turning point, as you know, when I lost one of my sons to suicide, and that, of course, pivoted me into a big change in my life.
Huge, yeah.
And now I find that I am a forest dweller. Especially now that Terry and I aren't traveling, doing our music and workshops in Europe. We've just been here in this wonderful forest in the hinterland in Queensland, and it's been a very, very special time, I think, for us, this COVID period. You know, I mean, I know that both of us have had to cancel travel. I had to cancel the trip to walk around and do the yatra around Mount Kailash in our European tour. And of course, you won't be going to India this year, will you?
No, first time in 22 years.
Yeah, so it is a time to be still and consolidate and
I just think it's an opportunity if we take it in that way. And I know for many, including myself, it's hard because there's big changes, and but if we can really open ourselves to that change, then we can also get the best out of it. And I agree, it's an opportunity to be silent and to come to ourselves and do our practice, and to also vision what's next, you know, especially for me at this transition point in life. So what's the next opportunity, and how can I express myself in a useful way? And also, but for me, it's all about balance at the moment. So I'm really trying to find balance. And I think when I speak with people around the world, a lot of people are saying that they've just been running on the treadmill for so long that I think a lot of us have lost perspective. And even of those of us in the yogic world, like when you're in service, then it's easy to just keep giving out. And I know for myself, I wasn't finding that balance. So for me, a lot of it's about balance right now.
I think so. And I think sometimes karma yoga for the listeners is a very important part of the style of yoga and the yoga communities that we grew up spiritually in and learned through. And karma yoga is the yoga of action. So we dedicate our action to service, but also in that we're directing our energy in a very positive way. So anything can be karma yoga, you know, whether you're teaching yoga, whether you're cleaning the toilet, whether you're making the beds, you know, whether you're raising children. It can all, in that beautiful love, serve, give attitude, become karma yoga. However, something I saw in ashram life, which I felt was quite out of balance at times, and now I reflect on that, is often I did see people taking that to an extreme and actually burning themselves out, and often ending up with adrenal fatigue or exhaustion. And that, like anything that's good, I think we can become fanatical about anything, and it really is important, I've found, to maintain balance, you know, to nourish, and also self-care is important.
Very much. I think we often miss that point. It's like you know, if you empty the battery, without taking an opportunity to fill it back up, then of course you're gonna, you're gonna burn out. And I've also seen that, and also for myself, I've really had to kind of check back in and make sure that I am filling up my battery, because I can give so much more, and I do it in such a better way when I've taken care of myself. Yeah, so I feel it's a very important point about karma yoga. We can bring that attitude anywhere, even if we're at work making money or, anything. We can bring the attitude of karma yoga, but it also includes looking back at ourselves and seeing, well, why am I pushing myself so far? Why am I not finding the balance? And so that's for me. I've had to look into that and really, and I think it's a life stage thing too. Like when I was in my 30s, I needed to work that hard because I had so much energy, and it created havoc internally. It's like I had anger and I had fire, and it's like the fire needed a place to be focused. And so when I was building this retreat environment, or I'd go to India and do 14, 16 hour days, it gave me I could see that I was much more than this physical body, and that I had a capacity beyond what my mind thought I had. And I needed also a channel for all that energy. But at this stage in life, I feel like actually now I need to kind of come in a bit more, slow down a bit more, check in, and do it a little bit differently. Yeah.
And I think that's, the point there, of course, which is most pertinent, is knowing when it's time to be still, because we can also use activity to run away from stillness.
Absolutely.
Because in stillness there can arise fear, and that and in avoidance of our feelings, sometimes because they're overwhelming, we can make ourselves busy. Yet to come to a point where we can be still and sit with those feelings, sit with those sensations, allow them to arise, see through them, and allow them to be cleared and cleansed. And comes a time, and to know when that time is right for you to do that. That's, growing in our wisdom as well.
Absolutely. And it's such a fine line, because I could see in myself, that fine line where sometimes it was my mind blocking, me feeling that I had the energy for something, or, some type of conditioning that would stop me from feeling like I could or would or wanted to do it. So sometimes it is our own mind and our own conditioning. But then on the other hand, that same mind and same conditioning can push us, as you just said, into being busy, so that we're not able to see in and reflect on that, why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think for me, that whole witnessing awareness, the mindfulness, as people call it these days, has been one of the key teachings or learnings that I've received through the years, that wherever you are, whatever you do, if you can keep that ability to be the present witness and have the mindfulness in front of whatever is going on, then you can use it to grow. Then you can use it to expand yourself. Then you can use it to find your inner center. So very important teaching, and I definitely have received that through our tradition particularly.
Absolutely. And really, that awareness, the ability to be the silent witness is our golden key. And I think it was really the essence of, because it's there in every aspect of the teaching.
Behind the mantra, it's behind the hatha yoga, it's behind your self-reflection, it's behind your karma yoga. So, you can't get away from it. I remember Swami Satyananda saying one time, he said, you're all schizophrenic. He said, you bring your mind wherever you go. He said, just put your mind on your shoulder, say, sit there. And then when you go wherever you go, it's there being the observer, the witness. So that was very, that teaching really came home, and it was like, put the crazy mind, the monkey mind over on the side. It can be there and it will continue to do its antics, but I don't have to listen to it.
He was a great teacher. He was, and very good, great sense of humor, which I always
Absolutely.
enjoy. But I always think of the mind as, sometimes I say the mind is a bit like, you know, a tool, like these glasses. You know, I can see, but I can see better when I need the glasses. These days, I have to say.
Comes with the forest dweller stage, I'm afraid.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm 10 years on from you. I'm hitting the big 6-0 this year.
Wow. So hopefully we'll be doing the 6-0 Kailash walk instead of the 5-0, because I was supposed to be at Mount Kailash for my 50th birthday. So
yeah, and me for my 60th. But I'm hoping that I won't be 70 by the time we get there. You know, we just have to really bow down to what is. You know, I guess that's one of the greatest wisdoms that's downloaded here is, can I be with what is?
Yeah,
can
very difficult, but yes.
But it allows such peace when we don't mind what happens. You know, that was one of the wonderful things that Krishnamurti said. You know, someone said to him, you know, why are you always so calm? And he said, because I don't mind what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easier said than done sometimes. But certainly we can, the more we, you know, really ground that and express it, then it makes life so much easier.
Absolutely. And one of the teachings, of course, and practices that's become a universal practice now in the world, which really came through Swami Satyananda adapting one of the ancient practices, is Yoga Nidra.
Yes.
And I know that we're both teachers of Yoga Nidra, and that we both have recordings available as well. And I know when I was, you know, had years of raising my children as a single parent, it was Yoga Nidra that got me through.
Me too.
I would always make time for Yoga Nidra, and it's such a rejuvenating, replenishing, simple, yet so deeply psychologically complex practice. And I believe now that you're running teacher training for that over in Anahat.
Yes, yeah, I am. I have been for the last kind of probably 6 or 7 years now. And it's such an amazing practice, and it works on so many different levels, from, you know, really being just that simple relaxation practice where you get to let go of your stresses and all the kind of inputs for a short time in your day and come back to your center. But you know, that's really only the beginning of it. And the practice within itself can bring us all the way to, you know, the full expression of who we are if we really take it as a serious practice. And it's very, very powerful. Each stage has its own benefits even within itself, and I really love seeing the process people go through in the training, because before they can teach it, of course, they have to become a practitioner of it, and they have to really embody the practice and transform themselves. It's not that you can just read the book and teach it. It's much deeper than that. And it's amazing to see that transformative process and expansive qualities that awaken in people.
And it's actually really tuning that beautiful golden key of awareness, which we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Very important.
And all done in that beautiful position, which tends to be my students' favorite position.
I think that's why they really come to class, to lay down.
And for those that who are listening, who don't know what Shavasana is, it's simply lying down comfortably on your back, supporting your body wherever it needs support, whether that's behind the thighs or a low cushion under the back of the head, or the arms if there is any injury. But really it's that beautiful total relaxation position, so that we can really go deep within. So I just, everyone's heard me talk about Yoga Nidra, but I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about the process of Yoga Nidra in your teaching?
Sure. Well, maybe the best way is to just briefly touch on each stage, because I find within and of itself, each stage has a powerful influence, but also a teaching in it.
Yes.
And if you look at the first stage, it's about internalizing. And so we come from our busy day life, whatever we're doing, and come into the position of Shavasana. And then we go through a process where we kind of systematically turn off each sense. So we give attention, for example, to the physical body and the sensation, the feeling within the body. And by giving that attention to it, allows us to disconnect from it. And so we systematically work our way through till only the sound, the ears are kind of still connected to the voice or whomever's guiding the practice. And it starts to establish us in what we call Pratyahara, turning our senses inwards. And I think this is a really important concept, because in our day-to-day life, we're being inundated with so much material. And even if even living here in the country, like just as we've been speaking, I think it's probably my daughter, because she's the only one who calls back to back, but I just had my phone going. I don't know if you heard it in the background, and it's like your ears are taking in that sound, and I could feel my nervous system having a reaction to the sound, because it was like, oh no, maybe they're going to hear the sound. And so if we think about, from the moment we wake up throughout the whole day, and even when we're asleep, we're also still recording things. Everything we see, feel, touch, smell, taste is being recorded in our brain. And we don't even know that process is happening. And not only is it being recorded, but it's stimulating different experiences. So it's stimulating the mind, making us think into the future. Well, I might go get that yummy smelling bread, or maybe there's something that comes from the past. You see somebody's face and brings up a memory from the past, even if that person wasn't there, but it reminds you of an auntie who did this or that. And so this process is constantly happening. And as long as our senses are externalized, we're constantly bringing in that material, and we're constantly using energy in our nervous system to process it and understand it. And so to have an opportunity, as you do in Yoga Nidra, to turn off from that, even if it's only for 20 minutes, half an hour, it gives your whole nervous system a break, and it gives you an opportunity to come back into your center. And so just even that first stage of Yoga Nidra is so
nourishing, nourishing. And particularly for people who have a really busy life, whether that's being a mother, where there's a lot of demands put upon you, or you have a busy business life, or even if you have a busy mind.
Yeah, and most of us do. And, even people who kind of lead quieter lives, they're still often connected to, say, social media or, TV. And again, there's all that input coming in. And so it's like we need to have pauses in our life. We need to have moments where we have time and come to ourselves, come to that inner center. So that beginning part of Yoga Nidra is an opportunity to turn off from all that input. Yeah. And then of course we come to the Sankalpa, which in and of itself, has its own amazing benefits. So for those who might know, Sankalpa means anything, the possibility, I'm not remembering the exact translation right now, but any possibility is there. Do you remember the translation of Sankalpa?
Yeah, well, Swamiji always used to say that Sankalpa is to set a resolve.
It's like a seed. It's a planting seed in the deep mind, in positive language, short. And I always bring up something like, it's like we're advertising to ourselves, and we wonder why advertising is like a multi-billion-dollar kind of business, and it's because it works, or else they wouldn't put so much money into it. And so everything that we see, feel, touch, hear is actually coming into our unconscious mind, and it's being stored there, like I just said. And so we need to start being a little bit more conscious about what we want in our deep mind. And Sankalpa is an opportunity to do that, where we can kind of put our own resolve or something that we want to manifest, and really feed it and water it and grow it. And so
I just like to always put a little caveat on that, because a lot of people, for a couple of years there, a few years ago, something called The Secret was really popular.
yes,
Where
yeah.
people were using masses of affirmations and often using those for desires, which were more desires of, monetary desires and business desires. Whereas something that came across strongly, I felt, with the Yoga Nidra teaching with Swamiji, was that this is more going to the root, to deep place. And I remember my first Sankalpa, I actually used that Sankalpa for 20 years.
Yeah, my first one I had for about 12 years.
And until I felt I'd absolutely imbibed that and was unshakable, which is interesting, because often people, they have an affirmation one day and another affirmation the next day. And,
that doesn't work in the same way. And that's what I meant by the advertising. That was actually kind of where I was going. So if, for example, Nike changed their, check every day, or they changed their just do it every day, would you remember it? Yeah, we wouldn't remember it, but we remember, you go anywhere in the world, and I've taught all around the world, and I say, who does just do it belong to? And everybody says Nike. It doesn't matter what country I'm in, because there's Nike symbols and there's just do it symbols everywhere. And so that's the same with Sankalpa. It's something that we need to, when we really truly find it. And I kind of differentiate between kind of maybe a short-term resolution, where we might need a jumping stone in order to kind of get to our actual Sankalpa. But when we get to Sankalpa, it's something that's of the deepest nature, and it's something that is, in a way, our life path, our inner, kind of expression. And so we mightn't find that right away, but when we do find it, then we need to keep it until it manifests. Yeah. So.
Actually, at this point, it was really funny. This morning I was looking for something, and you do a little search, and up pop all these old emails, and up came an email with Sankalpa, Swamiji's poem. And I thought, isn't that interesting that today I wanted to talk about Yoga Nidra with you? So I just thought I'd read a little bit from his poem, which has been a really strong influence in my life, actually.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a poem written by Swami Satyananda, and it's called Sankalpa. I am an invisible child of 1,000 faces of love that floats over the swirling sea of life, surrounded by the meadows of winged shepherds, where divine love and beauty, the stillness of midnight summer warmth pervades. Life often cuts at my body and mind, and though my blood may be seen passing and a cry might be heard, do not be deceived that sorrow could dwell within my being, or suffering within my soul. There will never be a storm that can wash the path from my feet, the direction from my heart, the light from my eyes, or the purpose from this life. It goes on. It's quite a long poem, but I'll just read this other stanza, which at times in my life when things were really tough, it really spoke to my heart. Shall I fall on bended knees and wait for someone to bless me with happiness and a life of golden dreams? No, I shall run into the desert of life, my arms open, sometimes falling, sometimes stumbling, but always picking myself up 1,000 times if necessary, sometimes happy. Often life will burn me. Often life will caress me tenderly. And many of my days will be haunted with complications and obstacles. And there will be moments so beautiful that my soul will weep in ecstasy. Brilliant.
Beautiful.
Brilliant writer.
Yeah, very much. And I think that last stanza is very helpful for what many people are going through at this time, because, you know, we are being challenged and we are being knocked over, many of us. And so just got to keep getting up and standing back up and running in like I imagine, you know, him running into the desert of life. And we do at this point. I've just released a course on resilience, and it's really about that. It's about, it's an online course, and it's, you know, resilience is about when we're challenged or when we come across adversity, that we're able to get back up and come back to our center and keep walking forward even in the challenges. Yeah.
And we can find that course on the Anahat Retreat website, can't we?
You can, yeah. So it's Anahata, ANAHATA dash in the middle. I always tell people retreat.org.nz. And if you just go to online courses, there'll be a description of it and a link through to where you can purchase it. And it's very, very cheap. And you get access for a year, and it has 5 different practices and a couple articles and some lectures. So I think it's very helpful for people in this challenging times. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, down below now, I'm going to have that link for you.
Thank you.
But those that are on the podcast, that was anahata-retreat.org.nz. and Swami Karma Karuna's course on resilience.
There's one on, and they're just short, so they're really easy to fit into your day, but one on Yoga Nidra, short one on mantra, one on Hatha Yoga and how that helps us to train ourselves in stronger body, one on lifestyle attitudes. So there's and meditation. I can't remember right now, but there's little lectures and small practice is really accessible to people. Yeah.
That's fabulous. And I think there's so many wonderful offerings out there at the moment. I know I've got quite a few free meditations on my website as well. And many people are seeing that this is a deep need at the moment to really sort of, reach out and hold hands. And
I think it's really important. And in those small practices, like the meditations you have, and they just bring us back to our center and remind us what it feels like to be in our center. And then it gives us a different perspective. So when we go to face whatever is challenging us, which is often coming from many directions at the moment, then we've got that ability to stand in front of it and kind of, I always think, you get to act rather than react. And if we do the practice, even if it's just a short one, it brings us to our center. So I think they're really important.
Absolutely. So we've talked about Yoga Nidra and that initial Pratyahara.
Yes.
And then from Pratyahara, we make the Culpa, which is that seed that we plant in the deeper mind. Yeah. And then in Yoga Nidra, we go through the body, and that has an effect on the nervous system, which I'm sure you'd love to share a little bit about that too.
Sure. Yeah, it's a couple different things. You're continuing to deepen your state of pratyahara or withdrawal from that sense input. So I find that's where often people fall asleep, because you kind of have turned off from the body, and so many people are so exhausted actually that they just need to sleep. But it also is working at a nervous system level through what we call the Homunculus man. So that's a little kind of diagram of our sense organs within the brain, or our sensory kind of nerve endings. And each time, you know, we say right hand, thumb, index finger, middle finger, as we go through the body, it's sending a message up to that part of the brain, and it's opening up a flow of vital energy and allowing for us to relax more deeply. So it's a very powerful part, and I would say it's a signature aspect of Yoga Nidra. I do sometimes think people misunderstand Yoga Nidra. It's wonderful that it's spread throughout the world, but it's also unfortunately lost some of the essence as it's gotten spread a little bit more deeply. And
I would say it's been slightly bastardized.
Yes, I was being a bit more polite, but yes.
Okay. All is welcome here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, people think that they lay down and they imagine pink elephants, that's Yoga Nidra, but actually that's not Yoga Nidra. That's great. Do lie down, and if you like pink elephants, welcome to imagine them. But there's some very important aspects to each stage of Yoga Nidra that make it Yoga Nidra.
And I love that aspect that we're really working with our hardware here. You know, we're really working with the neurological system in quite a scientific way. And Swamiji, I remember way back in the 80s, we were doing, you know, a lot of testing with ECGs, measuring brain waves and seeing the effects of Yoga Nidra on the mind, on the brain. It was quite fascinating.
Yeah, actually, when I was in Norway teaching last year, I met one of the people who'd been in one of the studies, and he was telling me about his experience. That was the study that Swami Janakananda had done, but he'd been in, you know, the machine, and he said they were in there for an hour, and he said, you know, it was so kind of intense being in this machine for an hour, but because of the Yoga Nidra and because of the process of Yoga Nidra, still he went into the state, the right state of experience. But it was quite interesting to speak with people that had been in the study. But yeah, so really in that body rotation stage is a signature stage, and you are working through the nervous system. So you're working from the body to the mind and relaxing, you know, the kind of surface area, and you feel that experience throughout the whole body. So by the end of the rotation, you know, all the kind of different parts of your body have kind of softened and released and balanced. And as you said, it's very much, you know, there's scientific aspect. It's not random and wonderful. Yeah, so that's a little bit about body rotation. Well, and it trains us to be less attached, I think, also to that physical realm. So we get an opportunity to turn off from it. And then when we're turning off from all that sense input and from the nervous system and balancing it, it gives us then the opportunity to come into that inner realm. And we come into, through the next stages of Yoga Nidra, what Swamiji talks about as a deeper experience of Pratyahara. So we start off kind of from a physical point of view, so we're turning off physically from the senses, but then we learn how to actually stand in front of our emotions and stand in front of our, you know, mental states as well. You'd mentioned how the witnessing is so important, and that's very much behind Yoga Nidra, because, you know, you're still observing as your body shifts. And then as we go into the opposites and the, well, you go first to the breath, of course, and the breath, I always think of it as it's kind of like you've turned off from the body, and the breath is so connected to our pranic, our energy body, that it's allowing you then to kind of harmonize that energy layer, and it's keeping your focus as well as you work with the breath. And there's so much you can actually do with the breath within itself. But you kind of move from that physical layer to then the energy layer, and then into the mental layer. And then when we come into opposites and visualizations, we're learning how to stand in front of, in a, you know, mindful or conscious way, different opposite experiences. So, you know, we imagine heavy and light and hot and cold, and in more advanced yoga nidras, you might use even emotions like pain and pleasure. And we learn to be in our center in these states that normally kind of we get attached to the pleasure and we push away the pain, and, you know, we don't like hot, we don't like cold, or we get attached to one or the other. And so to be able to be in those states without being attached and without rejecting them, without holding on to them, gives us a freedom that we can then transfer into our lives.
In Satsang, when we're talking about, you know, being in that state of peaceful presence, or that awakened state, people often misinterpret that, and they go, they feel that, you know, perhaps you're experiencing no pain in the body, everything's always, you know, equilibrium. It's the interpretation of experience that can be that equilibrium and that beautiful state of balance. It does not mean that pain won't pass through this body, or challenges won't arise.
Exactly.
Difficulties won't arise that need to be met, but then they can be met with the sattvic mind, or the balanced, calm, peaceful mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that that's a big part of those deeper stages of Yoga Nidra. You're actually training your ability to stand in front of, be mindful in front of all those different experiences. Because the reality is as long as we're in a body, and as long as we have a mind, and we're living in a society with different bodies and minds, then we are going to continue to be challenged. You know, there's going to continue to be things that bring us out of balance, or things that we like and dislike. And it's only the freedom is not in getting rid of that person that you don't like, or leaving your job, or, you know, deciding that you're never going to go to that corner of somewhere again because it didn't suit you. But the freedom is to be able to go and be anywhere and with anybody, and be able to keep your center. Yeah, and you don't have to like it necessarily, but we can still come kind of into that state where you can use it. You can see if there's a reaction, and you can use that for your growth, and you can notice when there's attachment and learn to be a little bit less attached.
And this is where you can see where all the ancient traditions really meet. You know, we're all aiming towards that same thing. And, you know, the kleshas, where we're talking about craving and aversion and the fear of death, these are all things that can actually be overcome if we work just with that one practice of yoga and take it to, you know, the higher, into the higher practices, which very few people actually ever do. They just practice basic Yoga Nidra. But it is a profound practice on its own, which can lead us into quite amazing and deep states of peaceful presence and clarity, where we can meet any adversity in life with
absolutely. And I know, as you said, in a way that practice has saved my life, but also brought me, you know, continuing to bring me into new layers of who I am. So I really so deeply love it and honor it. And I feel like it's almost a need in this day and age, because we do have so much stimulation from the outside and world. I mean, luckily we are slowing down due to that we're being forced to slow down, but life has been so busy. And, you know, I keep hearing from people how this chance to slow down, even though it's been enforced on us, has been so amazing. And how can we kind of keep that, you know, to keep that state? And Yoga Nidra is that point where you can pause each day. Each day we can pause and come and really use that state of harmony and balance, so that whatever else we're doing in our day-to-day life kind of has more meaning, and we're more conscious in front of it. And we operate more optimally, really.
Absolutely. So then, gosh, we've been talking for so long, but we better just complete those next couple of stages of Yoga Nidra so we can come out of it.
Yeah, so I did already mention the opposites and the visualizations. Specifically, the opposites, you're also, you're really working with that kind of the pendulum of life that we're constantly moving in between. I like, I dislike, I want, I don't want. So it's allowing us to learn to accept and flow and be less reactive. And particularly if people have pain or very oversensitive nervous systems, it can kind of create that strength in front of it so that they can then handle input. Because, for example, pain there is a stimulus, but actually our interpretation of that stimulus means that we have a higher or lower threshold. So if we can learn to, again, be the witness in front of it, then we're less influenced by that challenge in our life. Yeah. So, and we're also working with an area with the hypothalamus, which is an area of the brain that has to do with heat and cool and sleep cycles. And so when we're, depending on the type of opposite we're using, also that's the area of the emotional brain. So when you use emotions in Yoga Nidra, that's an unconscious area. So it is giving us experiences, or we're having certain hormones that are released and they influence different other areas of our body and mind. So when we learn to be able to have more strength or more ability to flow with those emotional states and those opposite temperature states, these types of things, again, it's giving us more control and more choice in our day-to-day life, because we're able to then translate that out and be less sensitive, oversensitive. Sensitivity is good, but we can become oversensitive, especially if it's from the nervous system point of view. So opposites is very helpful in that, from that point of view. And then with the visualizations, you're really working with your unconscious mind and your layer of what we call samskaras, which for those that may not know, that's your conditioning. So it's all the different things that we've experienced throughout life, from the moment we're in the womb until now. Every single thing is recorded and kind of in the deep unconscious mind. And when we use the visualizations and also the opposites, it can bring those things up to the surface. So it can maybe bring a memory up, or something where you liked or disliked it, or can be an image, a feeling. And if we, again, can be the witness in front of those experiences, then we they lose their kind of power over us. And
they do.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, this I see the process of Yoga Nidra as, I talk about in satsangs that I give now, I often say that it's our patterning that holds us back.
Absolutely.
It's our patterning that creates automations. It's our patterning that causes reactions. And Yoga Nidra is one of those practices that can absolutely release us from our patterning. And
we have to get to the unconscious mind, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the patterns are stored. And that's the thing. Yes. I think the mistake that we make is we say, okay, I don't want to eat chocolate anymore. I'm not eating chocolate, but we haven't got to the seed. Why do we eat the chocolate? Why do we need that or want that so much? So, and I'm sure you've come across some of those teachings, but Bruce Lipton talks about how I think it's 90%, 95% of our experience is being driven by the unconscious mind. So
yes,
that means all that patterning is actually what we are experiencing or expressing in our conscious life. And so if we don't get to those unconscious patterns, if we don't start to pull out those roots or those weeds in our unconscious mind, then we're still expressing and we're still repeating them, and we're still kind of caught in that cycle. And it's hard to get to the unconscious mind, and Yoga Nidra is an entryway. It's a portal to those layers of our deep self. And if we can remain conscious whilst in that state where we're in touch with the unconscious mind, which is the essence of Yoga Nidra, then we can pull out those patternings that no longer serve us, and we can start to implant through the Culpa what it is that we want to serve us and want for us to bring, move forward in.
And that's when that's repeated the second time in Yoga Nidra, when we are in that deeper state, and ideally when that second Sankalpa is repeated, we are still awake, yet the body is sleeping, so to speak, and we are awake, and there, that little gateway to the unconscious mind has been opened.
Yeah, And some of those early studies, which I'm sure you were a part of all that in those days, but they show how you can go into the, you start going into the alpha brain waves, and then into the theta, which is your dream state. And normally we're unconscious in the dream state, and then into delta, which is the deep sleep. And it shows that the practitioners, when they did these longer, more in-depth yoga nidras, had even the delta waves. And so normally you're unconscious in that, but they were able to say, well, this occurred and I heard that, and that was the experience. And so they were still awake and aware and in touch with their, and the delta waves were expressing on the in the studies and in the machines. So amazing that we have this capacity to access those parts of ourselves. And if we can do that, that's where the real transformation happens.
It is. It's quite profound. And I'm sure you have too. And we're not going to go into talking about experience here, but I'm sure we've both experienced quite profound shifts and changes through the practice over the years.
Wonderful.
And then after, of course, we plant that second sun Culpa in that deep place. We gradually have to reestablish our connection back to the body and to our environment, and that, again, that's a very important part of Yoga Nidra.
Very, very important, and especially if people are going out and driving or having to, interact with the world. So we systematically reconnect to all of our sense organs, so our sight, smell, taste, etc. And then I know for myself, I find that I'm so much more balanced when I reconnect. Like, you can really feel that difference between when you go in and when you come out.
Oh, absolutely.
And then that carries over into your day. So it's such an amazing practice. I feel so grateful and honored to, come across it and to be able to teach it and share it as I do.
Me too. And it was always said that about 1 hour of Yoga Nidra is equivalent to about 4 hours of sleep. So it is very replenishing. And, I would encourage any listeners out there who are on night duty particularly, or who are up with children in the night or have disturbed sleep. I often say, do a Yoga Nidra. It'll help you get back to sleep, but also do Yoga Nidra when you can remain awake, because it'll replenish you in a way that is equivalent to 4 times as much sleep.
Absolutely. No, it's a miracle practice.
Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners have learnt so much more about Yoga Nidra, as well as meeting you, Karma Karuna, and are aware now of the Anahata retreat in New Zealand and what it offers over there, and also your online course as well. Karma Karuna also travels like myself. So if you're in New Zealand somewhere and you'd like to have someone come and run a course or teach, or anywhere in the world, when we're allowed to fly.
When we're allowed, yes. Supposed to be in Norway next year, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, we are too, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I know we move in the same direction, but I never seem to meet you when I'm over there.
Well, I think, we're both very focused on what we're doing, and, and we do our work and then we move on.
Yeah, that's
and many of us are being asked to be serving in this way, to be sharing. I mean, I feel, and I know that you do too, so privileged to have had such a profound education in some of these very deep esoteric practices, and it would be a shame if we weren't sharing them.
No, well, we're just finding new methods, aren't we? Podcasts and
that's the podcast.
So when we can travel again, we will. But in the meantime, keep joining us on these new formats. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
My honor, and so nice to spend some time with you. Yeah, really beautiful to share with you. Long journey we've had, actually.
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you so much.
Join me for upcoming podcasts And please, if you found this helpful or you'd like to share a comment or perhaps your own experience, I'd love for you to leave that message down below this podcast. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I'm sure we can all help each other to hold hands, to remain awake, present, clear, and loving. Namaste.